And I'll admit, there was a period of time leading up to the show where I had already processed and was like, you know what? 4 best teams: Michigan, Washington, Texas, Bama. I got to that point, but I didn't stay there long because I started to poke around at Florida State's season. I started to think about what's important in football. I started to look at Alabama's season. I started to weigh most deserving team versus best team. And I started to come to this conclusion. The best team is the most deserving team. There's no either or. It's if you're the best team, you're the most deserving team. Well, how do you figure out who the best team really is? Is it by looking at the logo on the side of the helmet, or is it what happened on the football field? To me, you find the best team by what happens on the football field. Well, what happened on the football team field with Florida State and Bama? Well, let's look at that. Florida State went completely undefeated in a Power 5 conference. And not only did they go undefeated in a Power 5 conference, they went 2-0 against the SEC, including what we consider a pretty good SEC team. And that pretty good SEC team, of course, I'm referring to LSU, was a common opponent of Bama. And Florida State beat LSU worse than Bama beat LSU. It's like, okay, so you've got, there's a point for Florida State right there. Well, Bama has a loss. Florida State was undefeated. So that's another point for Florida State right there. Well, you start looking at strength of schedule. Bama played some pretty good teams. That's true. But Florida State wasn't playing slouches the entire year. I mean, they did, in fact, beat Duke when Duke was playing the best ball of their season. They beat Clemson.
LSU.
Clemson, LSU. They beat probably Miami was on the schedule too. Kind of a mid-SEC team like Florida, but they were working through all these different teams. And then I just hate the way the ACC championship was viewed, because if Louisville had the Clemson Tiger paw on the side of their helmet, that game would have been viewed completely different. They were looking at the brand of Louisville and saying, well, Florida State only beat them by 10 points, not that good of a win. That's the same Louisville team that beat the shit out of Notre Dame earlier in the year, right? And so we start to put all these pieces together, and Florida State actually did put together a dominating season. Not to mention, I know everybody's going to say, well, what about the fact that they're missing their quarterback? And it's like, you do have to take that into account, but they haven't lost a game since they lost their quarterback. And what they did was they went into a Power 5 championship game, and they beat a pretty damn good team. Louisville doesn't get to that ACC championship without being a pretty damn good team. Now, is Louisville Georgia? No. Of course, I'm not saying Louisville's as good as Georgia. That Bama win against Georgia was better. But what else did Bama do this season? Well, they beat a shitty Arkansas team that finished at the bottom of their division by 3 points. They beat a crummy South Florida team 17-3, which is not impressive at all. And then people could say, like Nick Saban saying, well, we're not the same team we were at the beginning of the year. Well, okay, but you are the same team that played last week, right? Because last week they needed a 4th and goal from the forever yard line, last second Hail Mary heroic play just to beat a pretty mid crummy Auburn team. So this idea is like this idea that, oh, we got to put the best team in and that's got to be Bama. Honestly, if I'm looking at this without my brand glasses on, I still think Florida State's a better team. Now, with all that being said, I'm going to wrap my rant up here because I've been going a little while. I will admit that I would have rather played Florida State than Bama. I'm not going to go as far as to say that I would have picked Bama over Florida State.